Hello friends, welcome back to True Love Stories Hub. I'm no longer monetized by YouTube, so if you like my content and want to support me, please check out my Patreon. Thank you so much for being a regular viewer of the channel. When did you realize that you actually dodged a major bullet by not dating or hanging around a certain person? I started talking to a girl I work with. First off, bad move from the start. Don't date coworkers. We started hanging out, going out for drinks and dinner, and things were quickly moving toward being intimate. Something told me to pump the brakes, so I did. We kept hanging out, but then she started calling me every night on my way to work. At first I didn't mind, I enjoyed the company, but it quickly turned into, "Don't go to work tonight, come by me instead." "No, I'm not calling in to work for you." Then every night it escalated into her saying she wanted to hurt herself. I slammed the brakes on that immediately. I stayed talking to her at first because I thought I could help, but it became almost every night. She ended up on stressful leave from work because of being depressed, and every night she needed me to call in and come by to keep her safe. After a while, I told her I couldn't do it anymore, and we haven't talked since. She never came back from stress leave. I later found out she had already been seeing another guy at work. I didn't care about that. Do your thing. But she gave him herpes. Bullet very dodged. I probably would have ended up stuck with a girl who called me every night wanting to off herself, and I couldn't leave because she gave me herpes. Story 2. I stopped hanging out with a buddy of mine in my senior year of high school because he was just too reckless and out of control. 3 years later, he came to a house party we threw, and I had a nice talk with him that ended with me saying, "I'm glad you're doing well. Just don't start anything with anyone tonight, relax and have a good time. Then we're all good." 2 buddies and I went to grab some food, and we got a call from my roommate. "Yeah, Ryan just got too drunk, punched a girl in the face thinking it was me, then drove away." The girl he punched was 5'2" and my roommate is 6'4". I don't know, man. Edit. Yes, we called the cops, but he was gone by then. The girl apparently took it from there with the police. I'm not sure exactly what happened after that. My buddy, who was initially trying to punch him, reminded me that he tried to tackle him, but Ryan shoved him to the side into the girl. He didn't know she was there. Upon tackling the girl, who he looked at directly, he started punching her in the face. He got tackled off, scurried away, and yelled something like, "F you, I'm coming back with my gun." This was a common thing he said in high school. He doesn't have a gun, his brother does. And his brother knows how much of a dumb A he is, more than anyone else, and would never let him near it. But I guess the girl tore her ACL when she was tackled. I haven't seen him since, so it's been about 2.5 years now. Story 3. I met a girl at a bar and had a drunk hookup. She wanted to meet up again, and I figured, okay, we were both drunk, so I really don't know how she is sober. I ended up going out with my buddies and their girlfriends. She proceeded to take a bunch of pictures with them within the first half hour of meeting them and uploaded them on Facebook, asked me to spend a weekend at her parents' place, and basically clung to me the whole night, getting upset if I even briefly talked to one of my buddies over her. I decided it was too much and told her it was moving too fast. After that, she started texting and calling me every night and driving by my house every day to see if my car was there. I would run into her at every bar I went to. I didn't realize until I saw on Snapchat that she could track my location. She scared the crap out of me. Story 4. This is very recent. I was supposed to go on a date with a guy just yesterday, Saturday. I had met him on POF, chatted for about a week and a half, and then planned to go for lunch. Despite me repeatedly telling him to go slow since this was my first date since becoming single and I was still feeling fragile, the moment we met, it was like I never said any of that. He wanted me to French kiss him right away and kept saying things like, "I'm gonna give you the best date so your mom is proud of me, and I'm gonna be charming and you're gonna fall." By Friday, I realized I really didn't want to go anymore. I even posted on the anxiety thread here because it had set me off. I eventually canceled, saying that I think we're expecting different things from this date. He then told me he thought I was immature anyway. Yesterday morning, he sent me a message that said, "Bewitch." Oh, how I laughed. Story 5. My roommate, who I considered a big brother figure, had a wolf husky that bit me. I hid it from him and told him I had cut my hand doing something else because he was going through a lot and I didn't want to stress him out. The dog became aggressive with me again, and I had to lock it in a room. I called him and told him what had been happening, and he yelled at me about my puppy, who has permanent scars on his face from this other dog peeing on the carpet. I probably should have told him right away since there was a lot to take in at once, but he didn't show any concern for me and instead tried to blame me for unrelated things. Story 6. Several years ago, a guy who worked as a waiter at a restaurant in the shopping center where I worked started crushing on me for a couple of weeks. He first approached me one day when I was in line at a drugstore in the complex. I had never seen him before, but he immediately started asking oddly persistent questions, more about trying to ask me out than actually getting to know me. I started feeling nervous for some reason and hastily told him I had to get back to my store. A few days later, he showed up there and managed to corner me, asking all the same questions, even more persistently this time. I hate it when guys try to ask me out while I'm working. It feels like they're exploiting the fact that I have to be polite and attentive, so I put on my best fake retail smile and turned him down more forcefully. Less than a week later, I heard he had been fired for instigating a shouting match that quickly escalated into a fist fight with one of the other waiters at his restaurant during dinner hours. Story 7. When she admitted to lying about something big in her life for weeks for no good reason, I realized how many other things she had lied about over the years that I had just swept under the rug. I always felt it was important to forgive her, and told myself it wasn't that big of a deal. But eventually, someone you trust, who supposedly trusts you, lies enough times that it all falls apart. You start to realize you can't honestly know if she's ever telling the truth, even about mundane things. It really sucks because we knew each other pretty well, and she was going through some of the worst times of her life when I finally reached my limit. I want to be there for her during the tough times, but I just can't be friends with someone who makes me feel unnecessarily betrayed all the time. Story 8. My first ever boyfriend and I were on again, off again throughout high school. We met through our mutual love of astronomy and both chose to major in physics, at different colleges, mind you. After all that, he finally chose another girl over me. She was an artist, and when he wrote to tell me, he said he chose her because it was great to go home to someone at the end of the day who doesn't know what I'm talking about, and had the gall to add, she's even a good cook. Obviously, now that I'm older, I realize that probably wouldn't have worked out. I'm doing my PhD in astronomy, and I'm still not the best cook. But it's funny, at 19, all you could see was devastation that you weren't what the guy wanted. Story 9. It took me 5 years, if you can believe it. It was a very stressful relationship. She somehow knew exactly how to cause the most stress and pain deep in my soul. We were engaged, and I was trying to set a wedding date, but despite being together for a few years, she kept dodging it. Finally, after 5 years, I realized that if we stayed together, I would probably die by 40 of a heart attack or cardiac arrest. I broke it off and moved on, and believe it or not, I regained my black hair within 6 months. I had started growing white hair around my temples during that relationship. Bullet dodged for sure. Story 10. I had a friend I'd known since 6th grade. Good guy, nice person, but he sometimes tried to do stupid things to fit in with the wrong crowds. Senior year of high school, he started hanging out with one of our old friends who had been expelled for something drug-related. We had stopped hanging out with him after that. That dude was always a good guy. Never forced anyone into anything, always helpful, and stood up for others, but, you know, a drug dealer. Well, my buddy started hanging out with this dealer again. I chilled with them a few times but noticed my friend had started talking about doing drugs. He had always been healthy, so that was a major red flag. I spoke with him a few times, telling him he should probably stop hanging out with the dealer and his crew. He refused to listen and insisted I join them. I eventually cut ties. Later, I found out that after we graduated and went to college, he didn't go. He kept hanging with that crowd and became an addict. A few years later, he called me, claiming he had joined a gang, that his gang had my back, that he did drugs but only for fun and could quit anytime, and that he worked at a car dealership and could get me free cars. Typical ramblings of a drug addict. My mom spoke with his mom, and she said he was high nearly every day for a whole year, started beating her and stealing her money, and came home with black eyes and bruises all the time. I probably should have tried to help him, but I'm not the type of person who can sway a drug addict. I'm just glad I dodged that bullet. Story 11. Just a couple of nights ago, I got a call from a friend I hadn't seen in many years. I had spoken to her about 2 years ago when I was heading to Las Vegas. She said she wanted to come with me, and I was planning on her coming to town. She lives elsewhere and joining me. She flaked at the last minute, and I didn't hear back from her even though the plans were pretty concrete. I haven't contacted her since, and then 2 nights ago she called me randomly. It turns out she's homeless now and looking for a place to live. But after listening to her talk, it's clear she's not all there. She claims her mother and father are crazy, her 2 sisters are crazy, her ex-husband is crazy, the social worker who took her son is crazy, and on and on. In the end, it seems pretty obvious that she's the one with the issues. Story 12. Halfway through my last year of college, my best friend at the time never wanted to do anything, and it wasn't like we were super poor. I would offer to cover him for nights out, day trips, lunches, but he just wanted to stay home and watch TV. I started doing stuff without him, and one day he complained about me always going out. I told him, look, you're a good friend, but I want to be social. I want to let loose a little. You can't rely on me to keep you company for your 88th Buffy marathon, and he completely flipped out. I went out for the rest of the day, joined another group of workmates at a bar, and found out he had been calling my boss, pretending to be me, to get me days off work. My boss figured it out because I'd always show up 10 minutes after he called. Stunned is the only word I can use to describe how I felt right then and there. I refused to see him after that. From what I've heard, he moved into his grandparents' home, and 15 years later still does nothing. Story 13. I am the bullet, lol. I have borderline personality disorder, and I can get very clingy and obsessive. I have a constant fear of abandonment, frequently ask for validation and attention, and fluctuate from idolizing someone to hating them throughout the day depending on their actions. I don't take rejection well and often go to extreme lengths to get people back, but usually I just end up pushing them away. I'm working on it, but I hate that my friends have to put up with it, especially my best friend and favorite person, unfortunately for them. They're too nice to abandon me, but I'm definitely not always a healthy person to be around. I'm really trying though. I think I've improved over the past year and have realized that my friends' bad moods don't automatically mean abandonment and that things aren't always my fault. It's still hard on everyone, and oh, if you couldn't already tell, I overshare a lot. Story 14. A guy I went to college with was one of those really weird guys who went beyond just being socially awkward. The second time he decided to talk to me, he told me he was giving me his phone number. I tried to get out of it, but I'm socially awkward and was already on my phone. He snatched my phone from my hand, put his number in, texted himself, handed my phone back, and left. I immediately checked the message he sent himself, and he'd saved his contact name as God. I deleted his number and went back to class. 5 minutes later, I got a text, then another, and another. I didn't notice for over an hour because I was in class. His final text was a tirade, cursing me out for not texting him back and calling me a massive bitch. Somehow, I managed to avoid him for the rest of the year, but I had mini panic attacks every time I walked through the canteen. Story 15. There was a girl I met at work that I initially had a crush on. I was a bit of a loser, so that wasn't much of a feat for her. She was cute and had an amazing figure, so I had no problem hanging out with her. One night, the three of us, her boyfriend at the time, and me went to a party. She treated him terribly the entire time. She would avoid him and act mopey whenever he was around. When he asked what was wrong, she told him to stay away from her. Later, she told me he was being too clingy for wanting to talk to his girlfriend at a party. She then disappeared into a room with two random guys. After an hour, I asked the boyfriend for a ride home because it was clear she wasn't coming out anytime soon. It was an incredibly awkward ride. The next day, she wanted to hang out with me and said she had broken up with her boyfriend. The next few months, we spent way too much time together, mainly because she would tell me what to do and I did it. One night, she freaked out on me and asked why I hadn't asked her out. I shrugged it off, but part of me wanted to go all the way. I didn't though, and a month later, she got a new boyfriend. He was from a very religious family, but she convinced him that sleeping with anyone had no consequences, and to do it with her despite his upbringing. She got pregnant the very first time, and his family pretty much disowned him. I was there at the time, by the way, physically. I was surfing the internet when I suddenly heard the bed squeaking behind me. She was extremely manipulative and a pathological liar, lying about almost everything. While I did become a huge doormat to her, it wasn't forever, though it could have been. At the time, I'd never had a girl want anything from me. I quickly learned that the mythical girlfriend wasn't worth my sanity or my life, and that it's entirely possible to have a relationship with a woman without having to bow down to her every whim. Story 16. I thought she was my best friend, but I'm not sure if she was jealous of me. She didn't really have a reason to be or what. It got worse and worse, with her trying to one-up absolutely everything I said or did. I don't even know if she was always like that and I just didn't notice, or if it was subtle. Maybe she liked me at first. I'm still confused. She kept it up until I finally unfriended her on Facebook. I hadn't talked to her in maybe 5 years, and then a couple of years ago she randomly messaged me and told me about the amazing night she just had with my ex, the one I had in 8th grade while we were best friends. It was so out of the blue because, like I said, we hadn't talked in maybe 5 years. She's still trying to make me jealous. I would have hoped she'd grown up, but oh well for her. Hopefully she can create her own happiness someday without stealing it from others. I guess I dodged a bullet because it sounds like she's still the same. She got pregnant in our senior year, and it looks like her mom raises the little girl while she goes from guy to guy and does drugs. She also tries to talk about the hood, at least she did on Facebook. This girl is whiter than sour cream, which always made me chuckle when she posted stuff. Story 17. A friend in high school was getting big into cars. Wanted to drive everywhere and do everything in his car and do risky things. One Friday, he asked me if I wanted to come with him and have a run at a place called Trabuco Canyon. I politely declined and stayed in all weekends to play World of Warcraft like the true introverted nerd I was. I didn't hear from him for a few days, nor did I saw him at school the following week. Turns out he tried drifting around a corner and oversteered, tried to recorrect and oversteered in the opposite direction, putting his precious BMW E30 into the side of a mountain. The entire passenger side was gone and pushed into the driver's side. Needless to say, I dodged a major bullet and still think of it to this day. Story 18. Dated a guy when I was 14 for over a year and broke up with him because he was a compulsive liar. He went behind my back with girls, was obsessed with making himself look tough and cool to his friends and other kids, and was pretty disrespectful to his parents. Stayed friends with him because I knew he cared about me but was a young, immature teen boy. Fast forward a year or so later, and he's addicted to Adderall and drinking friggin' NyQuil on school nights. Fast forward another year, and he's addicted to Xanax. Fast forward more, and he's addicted to heroin. Here's the catch though. I dodged him at his worst, but we got back together over a year ago, and he's clean and sober and is generally an amazing boyfriend. He cherishes every second of me out of fear of losing me again. He's wonderful now, and I'm extremely proud of him and his progress. Story 19. Before I met my husband, I was putting my feelings out in the dating world. Met this guy, and he seemed alright at first. But then he kept bugging me to talk to him on the phone while he played video games and didn't really talk to me, and he knew I didn't like talking on the phone. We hung out a few times and even saw a movie together. I just wasn't feeling it, so I slowed down my responses to him, and after about an hour of not responding while actually being busy with family stuff, he sent me this long message about how I'm a horrible person and I couldn't treat him like that, and so on. And almost immediately sent another message about how sorry he was and didn't mean it. We weren't even dating yet, and if I wasn't talking to him, he got so crazy. Luckily, I never let him know where I lived and blocked him with everything after that. I didn't even respond, I just saw crazy and noped out of it. Then I met my husband about a week later, and he let me set the pace and it was perfect. Story 20. I might have avoided actual bullets. Back when online dating was a new thing, I went on a third date with a girl that I was not interested in seeing anymore. I did not think we were hitting it off, but she asked if I'd go to a friend's birthday dinner. She was the only one that did not have a date. I did not see any harm, so I went. While talking to the person next to me, I overheard her say, "Why yes, we would love to join you next weekend." Or something to that effect. It took a few minutes, but I confirmed she was making plans for us. It was like a baseball game or something, which seemed weird for a lot of reasons, but it didn't seem like an invite was extended. She offered our participation. Regardless of my feelings, I was headed to Japan for a couple of weeks, and so I could not join anyway. I pulled her aside and told her that. She flipped out. In front of everyone that I had just met, she yells, and just who else are you sleeping with besides me? She ranted on for what seemed like minutes but was probably a few seconds. I should point out we had noted. The drama continued for a few minutes before I went to the bathroom, located back at my house. A few weeks or months later, I run into one of the women at the party at a bar. She was a few drinks before she recognized me. The woman confessed that I was the only one at the party that did not know my date was married. Her husband was deployed in Iraq. Until the outburst, everyone was starting to think I was an unpatriotic a-hole. Most of them were also Air Force. Fortunately for me, after the outburst, the party discussion became, I don't think that guy knows. Story 21. I had an ex that was an absolute psychopath. I was getting fed up with his controlling BS, so of course he wanted to have kids and trap me. Towards the end of our relationship, I found a keylogger on my computer, and I found that he had been Googling how to sabotage birth control. I was gone shortly after that, had to flee the state to get away from him. Not even 4 months after I left, he had gotten someone pregnant. I don't feel like it was a coincidence. Story 22. Dated a guy who seemed to want an add water instant relationship. I tried to buy me gifts on the second date. He barely knew me and he was really laying on the clingy charm. There was something that just made me uncomfortable with him. Fast forward, only 4 months, and I went to a class for my job. Guess who was in that class? Sporting a wedding ring. I instantly thought, jerk, he was married the whole time. He approached after class to say hi and I asked him when he got married. 1 month after he met me with a woman he also met on the same dating site. This man was so desperate for a wife/caretaker he didn't care who it was. I could have been chopping suey. More power to the new wifey, but I prefer a man who loves me for me, not someone who will take just anyone, so they don't have to be alone. So yeah, best of luck to the happy couple. Lol. Story 23. We were both bullets. He liked to cheat while I was at work, have the girls over in the house I paid for and am still paying for and such. I like to drag the girls out of my bed by their hair and destroy the phones that I also paid for that he used to keep in contact with them. At one point I saw a notification from one girl. We would call her Sam, and I just snatched his phone and threw it out the window while we were going down the road. It took way too long for us to split due to both sharing a lease, but I'm sure we are both happy we did. Story 24. When I found out he cheated on me with his ex, I talked to her, she wasn't aware of me, and I also talked to another ex he had been just chatting with over text. Come to find out he's cheated on every single girl he's been with. The other girls are in year 3 or 5 plus following him around hoping he would come back to them. No friggin' thank you. 6 months was long enough. Bullet dodged. Story 25. I had a friend who I realized just sucked the life out of me. She was only happy when she was complaining. She was miserable constantly, and the only thing that seemed to make her less miserable was telling me about its ad nauseum. The turning point came when I realized I was also miserable and exhausted during and after every prolonged interaction with her. I did some research and came across the term energy vampire, which some people take to mean something supernatural, but sane people use to describe people like her, who gain positive feelings by taking them from others. I began unentangling myself from her shortly after and noticed immediate results. My mood and overall outlook on life improved. I've since moved out of state and haven't seen her for years, but she will still occasionally message me, and I will be polite but refuse to engage. Story 26. So mine was not hanging around two people. I just realized that the only reason I did hang with them was because I'd always hung with them and they were my pot connection. But they were not nice people. They were users. They just used me for convenience, driving and someone to rag on. I stopped responding to them and they started stalking me. Real deal stalking. Knocking on my bedroom window at 2 a.m., calling me nonstop, riding by my house all the time, following me in public whenever they found me. I was unrelatedly hospitalized and they tried to visit. I had to have them removed by force. Point of note, I'm a dude, and they are too. Story 27. When I got with my husband and realized how I've really only got 3 friends, it's crazy how fast people drop you when you're happy and they hate that for you. The one that hurt the most was someone I considered my best friend. But when I wasn't babysitting for her as often and wasn't buying extra stuff for her kid, she stopped liking my husband, started calling him abusive and controlling. Because why do it for your own kid when someone else is? I gave her kids so much and did so much for them just out of kindness, but she took advantage and got mad when I had other financial responsibilities that weren't buying her kid diapers and taking her on special outings. Stuff I didn't have to do for them. Story 28. This thread actually makes me feel a bit better because I had a best friend drop me. I wasn't ride or die enough for her even though I dedicate hours of my life to emotionally take care of her and confirm whatever she wanted. Plus, I'd tell her she's in the right all the time. Even though she slept with or had a secret relationship with my crappy now ex-boyfriend while I was still dating him, and I actually forgave her and the boyfriend. I finally was cut loose when she encouraged me to join a sorority to meet new people. I was a transfer student only for her to get mad about it after I joined. She said I wasn't dedicated enough to her. I finally saw the sick reality when my now current boyfriend was in the hospital, and I called her for emotional support and she left me on red. I saw she was actually home watching a movie from her Snapchat, and she texted me 2 weeks later barely acknowledging it. I'm still hurt that she left my life because I thought she was my best friend, but looking back, I'm glad I dodged that nonsensical bullet. Story 29. I was dating a woman with kids. I have kids as well, and she literally said, being friends and being civil aren't the same thing in regard to me being friends with my kid's mother. She expected me to have nothing to do with my kid's mother unless it involved the kids. Now, if my kid's mother had been some kind of insufferable person, I would have agreed. However, she's not. We've known each other for 14 years and have been friends since. Yes, we got romantically involved, but that's long dead now. This new woman in my life either couldn't or wouldn't accept that. That was it for me. I was Audi 5000, my friend. Also, she seriously got mad that I said, I guess I've got to do that myself since you're not here. She said I made her feel inadequate and was very upset. Oh, and if I ever wanted to get a massage, it would have to be by a man or an unattractive woman. Bullet dodged? Hell yes. Story 30. I had a family friend through my SO that I trusted implicitly and was very close to. During a difficult time for all of us, she began to unravel and reacted poorly to some decisions I made about my wedding. She changed my perspective significantly about the limitations of our relationship. With support from my SO and time, I have re-established boundaries, pulled back emotionally, and remained friends with her. I spent too much time in my life assuming that people either come or go. In reality, relationships are dynamic with time, unique in scope, and require different levels of care throughout. In my situation, finding the right balance for both individuals, especially when a relationship is inevitable to some degree, feels more freeing than attempting to end every part of the relationship. Emotional bullet dodged, changed expectations of familial relationship rather than cut it off. Story 31. There was this guy that I had a crush on for ages. I lost contact with him for years after his mother, my neighbor, moved away. About 8 years passed and I ran into him at a friend's baby shower. We reconnected and I thought maybe we could start dating. Everyone was warning me to be careful to not jump into things with him. He was bad news, etc. So I waited. I just kinda sat back for a second to see how he was as a person now. Well, turns out he was neck deep in I don't know how many different drugs. I was no longer interested in a relationship after finding that out, but he apparently was. He asked me what my religious views were and told me that if I didn't believe I couldn't be with him in heaven when we died. I really feel like I dodged a bullet because that dude was thinking so far into the future it was scary. Plus, I'm not a fan of hard drugs and he was on like most of them. Story 32. I realized my ex was very insecure, controlling, and immature. I was 22 when I realized this, and she was 19. I never noticed early on, but we got to a point where I wasn't being my usual talkative, energetic self around her anymore because she'd always make a fight out of something I said. We'd walk around the mall and I'd stare at the ground or the ceiling because she would randomly argue with me and accuse me of staring at the other girls. I wouldn't even know who she was talking about. 2.5-year relationship. I actually wanted to marry her because she was what I was comfortable with. Eventually, she broke up with me. And 7 months after that, I was thriving on my own. Now I've never been happier. Got a new car, got my career lined up, making some decent money. None of that would be possible if we were together today. Story 3030. I did date the bullet. We were best friends. I even saw how crappy he was with his ex-girlfriend. But since she was her own type of bat crap, I let him slide and let her take most of the blame for that failure of a relationship. He was a little younger than I was, and that alone I knew might be a problem, but I went for it anyway. Post-divorce, he seemed fun. Rebound. Right? Wrong. 1 month in, he's drunk upstairs with his friend making crab and other various types of smelly seafood. At 3 a.m., they're yelling a lot. I went upstairs to see what's up and he immediately started calling me names. Never has he acted like this before. For a few seconds, I thought he was joking, and so I just stood there with a confused smile on my face. And then he hit me. I ran downstairs and hid in his room. He didn't come after me. I slept on the floor for a while. I had been drinking too and couldn't drive or walk home, so when he passed out, I bailed. He later admitted he'd also been smoking and said that's why he blacked out and hit me. I called BS and never looked back. Every once in a while, he'll message me on social media, and if I don't respond, he'll block me for a few months. He's been doing that for 3 years. I almost feel bad for the idiot, but he's a psycho, so yeah. Bullet dodged, I suppose. Lol. Story 34. I am pretty sure I was the bullet. I stuck to past friends and never made new ones. Lost my last friend since kindergarten, and now I'm just focusing on my mental health and getting better. I understand being around a person with low self-esteem, depression, and anxiety isn't fun, but I guess I thought they would help. Soon it turned into eye rolls each time I brought up something that was eating away at me. I think I became a burden to them. Now, I walk every day because I know it helps my mood. I go to support groups and meet a woman who does mental fitness plus yoga on the weekends. I think I'm on the right track. Ass a to all. Story 35. I'd been best friends with this guy for 15 years, but when I moved far enough away for college that I only came back once or twice a year, he never made an effort to see me. It was like I was inconveniencing him by trying to see him in person when I was finally in town, so much so that I didn't see him in person for almost 2 years, despite the fact that he had only moved an hour away from our hometown. Eventually, it became frustrating listening to him justify it by saying that he needed to make time for other people who were visiting first because I was the visitor at that point. That was just one of many excuses, but it was the final one. I had reached my breaking point, and my plan was to write him a letter detailing my feelings about the situation so that he wouldn't have the chance to cut me off or anything like that. Well, he got wind of it beforehand and reached out to me first by attacking me via text message and telling me I needed to grow up or get out of his life. So I texted him, "lol bye," and cut him out of my life. It's been over a year and a half at this point, and I haven't said 2 words to him since, and I don't have a single regret. It was a huge bullet dodged by not having his toxicity in my life anymore. Story 36. I had this buddy of mine from when I was a child that I used to hang out with all the time, but my family moved halfway across the USA when I was 12, and so we lost touch. About 5 years later, I moved back home and tried to reconnect with all the friends I had before. At first, when I was hanging with him, things seemed all right, but there were a couple of red flags. Like he didn't listen to me very much and had quite the temper. After a few months of this, I'd had enough and decided to ghost him. Not the most mature way to deal with it, but this was 10 years ago when I was a child. The guy friggin' drove by my house 3 times a day looking for me, even though he lived over 30 minutes away. Thankfully, I went away to college around then, before things escalated further. A couple of years later, I saw him again, in a police report. Got arrested for bringing a fully automatic gun and a pound of pot to an anime convention. That guy was friggin' weird. Story 37. 2. I started hanging out with a high school friend that I hadn't seen in a few years. Slowly, his behaviors started to transform me into an A-hat, to say the least. Anytime we hung out, he insisted alcohol, women, and smoking should be involved. He couldn't just hang out and chill. I started drinking heavily, smoking occasionally, and attempting to involve myself with all kinds of women. I began lying to people I cared about, lost a few good friends, lost my fitness, and became depressed through the process. Realized I was going to end up in trouble if I kept hanging around him. Ghosted him, never looked back, and now I'm in a much better place. Story 38. She was a coworker, and I thought that she was a fun and uninhibited person that I liked being around. After months of working together, we went on a 3-day trip to Atlantic City to let loose and have fun, but it was the messiest free-for-all that I had ever experienced. I was so unmoored from my experience that I constantly was in situations where I felt were life-threatening. booze and drug-addled, and I needed to protect myself and her from this reckless behavior. I found it to be one of the most stressful situations that I've encountered in my adult life, especially because we were trying to have some fun. Weeks later, after I tried to make some distance from her in the situation, her daughter, around 9 years old, called me to say that I needed to be her mother's friend because mom needs someone like you to keep her grounded. I didn't know how to deal with this and asked to be transferred to another location very far away. I had my own problems, and she was so far out of my comfort zone that I could see this wasn't going to end well for either of us. I still think she's a good person, but sometimes things don't work out for a reason. Story 39. I had a friend in middle school and high school that I used to hang out with often. We were in classes together in middle school and had the same study hall room in high school. He moved with his mom to Texas our sophomore year, and while we tried to stay in touch, I got weird vibes from him and eventually drifted away. A year later, he shows up at school one day and is hugging his friends, including myself, and just being the same guy I knew back in the day. An hour or two after he leaves, it's the talk of the school that he's a wanted criminal, armed and dangerous, after stabbing his mom with a screwdriver in Texas and stealing her car to hide in our city. Now he's in jail, and I really dodged the bullet. Story 40. Actually, it was a couple of guys that I used to be really good friends with. We used to smoke pot on the weekends, but then they got to where they had to smoke all day, every day. Then we were all hanging out one weekend having a sort of party, and they brought out a bag of meth. That was the end for me. Obviously, I didn't try any after being encouraged to do so. I stayed the rest of the night because I had been drinking, but then I left the next morning and never came back. I tried talking to them, but apparently I was just being a buzzkill. Glad I dodged that bullet. I'm doing fairly well for myself and my family. One of them is in prison and the other lives in a pay-by-the-week motel. Story 41. She got accepted into a well-known state college in our area. I did not because I was struggling in school and had a major death in the family at the time. I applied to a local community college and got accepted and shared the good news. She told me that we couldn't be friends if I went to stupid people's school and tried to convince me that I'd never succeed if I went there, so I cut contact after we graduated. We haven't talked in 2 years, and I recently got my associate's degree just to prove that she was wrong. Story 42. Long story here, but I feel like I need to explain everything. Back in college, one of my best friends tried setting me up with one of her sorority sisters. We decided to hang out and go for a walk one night, and by the end of the walk, we were holding hands at her insistence. For the next couple of days, we'd hang out, and then on Saturday night, I walked her back to her sorority, and we spent an hour sitting on the front porch of the sorority house, cuddling with each other. I was sitting upright, she sat next to me and lay on my lap. We agreed to go on a date to a local pizza place the following weekend. Well, on Tuesday, I got a text from her saying she wanted to talk to me. We met up and she told me she had second thoughts and decided to cancel the date. I told her I was fine. Truth be told, I really wasn't feeling a connection there, and she sadly walked away. I was later told she spent the entire night crying in her sorority. Here's what happened next. Anytime we saw each other on campus, she averted her gaze and sped up like she didn't want anything to do with me. It came to a head one night when she and some of her sisters came to my fraternity, and she spent the entire night being really weird. Wouldn't make eye contact with me, try getting away from me. Even though I wasn't making any attempt to approach her, I was simply hanging out with my friends, which included her sorority sisters. The clincher was when I was trying to go upstairs and one of her sisters ran out of the stairwell and said, "Hey, you should probably take the other stairwell." I say to the sister, "Is girl's name in there?" The sister gave an awkward smile and said, "Yeah, she doesn't want to see you. I'm sorry." I used to be sad that it didn't at least make it to the date stage, but I realized then that I dodged a major bullet. I later learned this girl, who was a theater major, faked a family emergency during a show where she was working crew so she could see an on-campus concert. Girl is too eager for relationship, cancels date after what amounts to a 72-hour cuddle fest, then freaks out whenever she sees me on campus, including making me feel unwelcome in my own fraternity. Story 43. A girl cheated on her boyfriend with me for around 10 months. About 3 months in, I really caught feelings. She promised she would break up with her boyfriend so we could be more serious, but she repeatedly pushed out. After maybe the third time, I realized how blind I was getting by my love for her. I don't know if once a cheater, always a cheater is true, but I do know that I would have had major trust issues with her if we did date. I know some people are probably wondering how I could even fall in love with someone like that. Being a cheater didn't make her any less fun to be around. Her laugh, her smile, and her sense of humor were all intoxicating to me. I still loved her after that, but I stopped pursuing a relationship. I just decided to keep going because spending time with her was the highlight of my life. And obviously, the intimacy was really good, so that didn't hurt. It only ended around 2 months ago when she and her boyfriend got engaged. She kept texting me after that. But about a month ago, my sister, who I trust a lot, convinced me to cut contact entirely. I still think about and miss her a lot, but I know it's for the best. Story 44. My childhood best friend started not returning my calls or declining invitations to hang out as soon as we started high school. He lived in a different city, and it was tough to meet up, but we had been friends since kindergarten. Eventually, I stopped trying and didn't hear another word from him. I looked him up on Facebook last week, and he posted a lengthy rant on his public profile about being on probation and banned from a local city. Probably was for the best. Story 45. I met this girl in college last year. Over the course of a semester, we had gotten kinda close, and eventually we started banging. I wasn't looking for a relationship, so I let her know, and we stopped. We had a lot of mutual friends, so we still hung out occasionally. About a week later, while we were all hanging out drinking, this girl shows up late, grabs the bottle, and starts chugging. We all look at her and go, "Maybe you want to slow down?" And she goes, "No, I have to be drunk." After that, she stopped coming around, but I'd see her at parties and she was a mess. I never saw her sober again. She dropped out of college less than a month later. Story 46. Went on a date with a girl, and things seemed okay at first. After the first date, she started bringing up marriage and seemed to be really clingy. She was texting and calling me so much it was overwhelming. I broke it off a few days after the first date, and she continued to text me relentlessly with bizarre messages, demanding further explanations, even sending explicit pictures to lure me back and telling me how much she loved me. I had to block her number. I felt bad for her but had to nope out of that situation. Story 47. I worked with this really handsome Eastern European guy for a while. He was a real charmer and single too. He and I would flirt a bit every now and then, but I always felt like he wasn't quite as invested as I was. One day, I heard he's moved back to his old town, which was weird because I remember we chatted about how happy he was with his current house and not wanting to move for a few years at least. I was suspicious, so I turned to the biggest gossip in the company. Turns out he got kicked out of his house by his girlfriend because she found out about his side chick back in his home country. Story 48. A friend that I've known since elementary school. Looking back, she was really rude and mean to me. She ended up ditching me to hang out with the popular crowd in middle and high school. I came out to her, and she made it all about herself. I finally just stopped talking to her, and I'm so glad I did because I'm no longer disappointed or on guard. My friends now are friends I actually want, something I had to learn with age and experience. Story 49. We had worked together in close proximity for over a decade when I got moved to a different office under the same company, and she came to visit me there for the first time a few months in. Since moving to this office, we had both been swamped and had not hung out in a while, going from texting and snapping each other all the time to talking maybe once a week. When she came in that day, I was appalled at how negative she was. She literally did not say one positive thing that wasn't also sarcastic. Clearest example from this encounter, my coworkers and I had a running conversation on a legal pad that was mostly mushy, motivational stuff because the people we worked for were awful and demoralizing. The first thing she does is pick it up, read it, gag, and start talking about how this is what texting is for and it's so gross she wants to throw up. When I defend it, she tries to pick out bits written by one person to heckle and still stays on this person when I try to change the subject. My stomach stopped because I realized she came over just to find stuff to crap talk to my coworker. Both she and her mom, who was our supervisor, irrationally hated this woman. I think they were intimidated. I ended up deleting and blocking her on everything. That afternoon, the next time I had a break, it made me think of all the times I would feel uncomfortable around her. Sometimes because she'd say or do negative and mean things, and sometimes she'd turn that on to me. Always when I was being optimistic or trying to improve myself or the situation. How she hated everyone she met honestly disgusted me and caused me to reevaluate myself and my relationships. It was wrong to ghost her like that, but it's amazing how relieving it was. Story 50. Not sure if it's a bullet per se, but I dodged something. At one point, my workplace took on a bunch of high schoolers who wanted to volunteer for their 40 hours of community service. One particular kid, let's call him Jeff, came off as socially awkward and a bit too eager to please and was thrown into my department to help for an hour or so every couple of days. A few weeks pass and Jeff is taking on more hours. Apparently, the school had some system where if you got more than needed, like 50 to 100 hours, you could get a reward. To the point he was coming in almost every day after classes and clocking around 3 hours per day. My department was often understaffed, so we didn't turn down free help. During that time, Jeff would follow me around constantly and made himself very helpful. I thought he was a nice kid and treated him like anyone else. Come summer vacation, he cut back his hours but still came in frequently. One day, while chatting with my boss, she jokingly mentioned that Jeff had been asking about where I was at lunch every day since I never went down to the staff lounge. She told him I went home for lunch. I live 5 minutes away and laughed about me getting an admirer. I laughed too and pretty much forgot about it. Over the next month, I kept dodging him without realizing it. One day he approached my boss again and asked where I was. She said I was probably home, and he replied, "Ah, I could have gone with her." Then asked my boss for my address. She laughed and dismissed him, but told me later. Jeff was 15 while I was 24 and living alone. Out of the blue, Jeff slowly but surely stopped coming to volunteer. He graduated, and I didn't see him much anymore. Years later, I'm watching the news and see an older-looking picture of Jeff. Police are on the lookout for him, apparently for drugging women's drinks and taking advantage of them. Story 51. I slowed down on hanging out with a bunch of girls I was really close to. We partied a lot, but it was getting old. After a year or two of not seeing each other, we hung out again. She bought me cigarettes with my money when I was 17, and then kept them. My boyfriend was going to boot camp for the army, and when we got mad at her stealing, she said she hoped he would get shot in the army. Later, when I got pregnant, she told me I should abort my baby. I said no, and we got in a texting war. She said she would punch me until I lost the baby. I stood up to her, but she never came. I saw her for one last time 6 years ago, and she asked how I was. I was still a little salty and said, "Good. I haven't seen you since you said you were going to punch me until I lost my baby. My son is now X years old, and he's amazing." She was embarrassed and left. Story 52. A girl I worked with and I started dating. After a few months, it wasn't working out, so she called it off. Fair enough. She said she didn't want relationships and wanted to travel. She wanted to remain friends, but I told her I needed time to heal because I was new to dating and it annoyed me that she had given up on us so easily. She put me under a lot of pressure for another few months, begging to be my friend, which drove us further apart. I realized she was now putting in more effort than when we dated. When she didn't get her way, she made my work life difficult by ignoring me, even if it jeopardized the team. Later, she spread false rumors about me trying to fight her friends and becoming toxic at work. Discovering she had started seeing another guy while lying about valuing honesty was the last straw. I cut her from my life, starting with social media, keeping only necessary communication for work. Story 53. I saw him back in the jail log 2 weeks after it ended. He had managed to stay out the entire time despite being locked up about 4 times before our relationship. I know, what was I thinking? I was young and dumb, probably still am. But to be fair, this info about his past was not disclosed to me initially. It took time and stories for curiosity to get the best of me, so I looked him up. The relationship was crap, and he ruined a lot in my life. I lost a full-ride academic scholarship because of him. He introduced me to drugs, convinced me to leave a good job to work at a restaurant with him, and had me falsely Baker-acted. This is how much control he had over my life. He was the most manipulative piece of crap I have ever seen, and I will always regret it. Story 54. In high school, because of some overlapping social circles, I ended up hanging around a kid a few times who wasn't known for making the best decisions. One day, we spent the day hanging out and driving around in a friend's mother's car. In the evening, we stopped at someone's house for a get-together. I chilled in the car, and before I knew it, Mr. Reckless got permission to drive the car. I immediately called a different friend to see if I could come over, and Reckless dropped me off without incident. What ensued later was a hit and run, followed by a police chase with a passenger hanging out of the trunk. I think the car ended up totaled in the end. Story 55. My ex and I had major fights after a 4-year relationship. It got worse day by day, resulting in a completely toxic setting, and I eventually found out I was being lied to and cheated on with someone I was good friends with. I took the high road and talked it out with both of them rather than reacting physically and ended up being left for the friend. I accepted it and got better to the point I'm currently living way better than ever before, whereas the ex continues to be in a toxic rock bottom. She knows it too, after she tried to crawl back into my life nearly a year later to become friends. When I denied her, she got mad and started bringing up every single flaw I had years ago. I ended the call immediately. Story 56. I was dating a girl, talking to her, hooking up when drunk, sometimes hanging out sober, etc., who was on and off with a guy during this time. I thought it was fun to drink, call him and talk crap to him when she was with me. She seemed to love it. Very strange dynamic. I was a freshman in college, so we were all immature. Anyways, the girl I was talking to ended up breaking it off with me to get back with the guy. I was upset, but not the worst breakup I've had. She had a friend who was from another town about 5 hours away, 1 year younger than me, who had just moved here for college. I started hanging out with her more and more. She was best friend with the girl I had just broken up with, and we had been good friends while I was dating her. After about a year, she and I were very close, hanging out just about every day. We went to a concert out of town and had some ecstasy. We went outside to smoke because we were rolling face and needed a break. And on a whim, I asked her, "Do you want to be my girlfriend?" I'm sure it was the drugs that made me do this, but we left in the morning, boyfriend and girlfriend. Fast forward 6 years, and she is the love of my life, the most amazing girl I've ever met. I knew she was great before I asked her out, but she's only gotten better. Now we've been dating 6 years. I asked her to marry me a year ago, and we are getting married in October. We just purchased a house as well. The original girl and my fiancé don't speak anymore for obvious reasons. She works a minimum wage job and really doesn't have anything going for her, while my fiancé just got Teacher of the Year at the school she works at. I often think about how much of a D-head I would be if I had ended up with the other girl rather than my fiancé. She makes me want to be a better person every single day. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.